until a secret team changed everything. In the shadowed years between two world wars, Europe pulsed with a strange rhythm, a rhythm of recovery, paranoia, and invention. Nations rebuilt their cities, but in secret, they also rebuilt their weapons. Among the innovations rising from the ashes of the First World War, one would soon become a symbol of German genius and Allied despair. It was not a tank, a bomb, or a plane. It was a machine of logic, wires, and light. It was called Enigma. To the untrained eye, the Enigma looked harmless. A typewriter encased in polished wood, fitted with a set of rotors, each engraved with the alphabet. But within that box, mathematics met mystery. With every keystroke, the letters scrambled through layers of electrical circuits, producing an output no human could predict. What began as a commercial invention, meant for bankers and businessmen, would soon become the beating heart of Nazi secrecy. By the mid-1930s, the German military saw in Enigma something more than innovation. They saw invincibility. With a few modifications, they turned the humble cipher machine into the backbone of their communications empire. Every division of the German war machine, from the U-boats stalking the Atlantic to the Luftwaffe's squadrons in the skies, relied on Enigma to transmit orders in complete secrecy. Each day, German operators changed the settings of the machine. 3 rotors selected from a set of 5, each positioned in one of 26 possible starting points. Add the plug-board connections, 10 cables swapping letters before the signal even reached the rotors, and the result was a cipher with more than 150 quintillion possible combinations. To the world of 1939, Enigma was unbreakable. The Allies knew of its existence. They intercepted the signals, filled with jumbled letters, sometimes thousands of them per day. But to their codebreakers, these transmissions were like whispers from another world, undecipherable, mocking. In London, in Warsaw, and in Paris, cryptographers worked through endless nights, trying to glimpse a pattern in the chaos. None could find one. But then, someone did. In the years before the war ignited, a small team in Poland, young mathematicians working for the Polish Cipher Bureau, achieved what no one else could. They cracked the first version of Enigma. At the heart of this victory stood a man named Marian Rejewski, a quiet, brilliant mathematician whose weapon was algebra. Using pure logic and a touch of luck, he reverse-engineered the Enigma's wiring, without ever seeing the inside of the machine. By analyzing intercepted messages and comparing the patterns of daily keys, Rejewski built a mathematical model that mirrored Enigma's inner workings. In 1932, Poland could read German military traffic. For the first time, the code had been pierced. But victory was fleeting. As the Germans realized the strategic value of Enigma, they improved it. New rotors, more plug-board cables, more complexity. By 1938, the Poles were falling behind. They had the brains, but not the resources. They needed allies. In July 1939, just weeks before Germany invaded Poland, the Polish Cipher Bureau made a fateful choice. They invited British and French intelligence to a secret meeting in Warsaw. There, Rejewski and his colleagues revealed everything. The wiring diagrams, their mathematical methods, even a working replica of the machine itself. It was a gift that would change the course of history. When war erupted that September, Poland was crushed, but its knowledge, its secret weapon, had already escaped. And it found its new home in a quiet English manor, surrounded by hedges and secrecy, a place called Bletchley Park. Deep in the English countryside, far from the front lines, an unassuming estate became the stage for one of the most consequential battles of the Second World War. Bletchley Park, a sprawling manor of brick and timber, surrounded by neatly trimmed hedges and misted lawns, was hardly the battlefield anyone might imagine. Yet within its walls, a war of the mind was underway, one that could determine the fate of millions. Here, Britain gathered its brightest, Mathematicians, linguists, chess champions, cryptographers, even crossword enthusiasts, chosen not for their bravery in battle, but for their ability to see patterns where others saw chaos. Among them was Alan Turing. Quiet, enigmatic and brilliant, Turing's mind worked differently. Where others saw impossibility, he saw systems, logic and machines. For him, Enigma was not an impenetrable fortress, but a puzzle, a challenge to be solved with method and ingenuity. Bletchley Park became a hive of urgency. Hundreds worked in makeshift offices, the air thick with cigarette smoke and tension. Night after night, messages flowed in from the front. U-boat commands in the Atlantic, strategic orders from Berlin, messages that could not be read except with a key that did not yet exist. Initial attempts to crack the code were failures. Every intercepted message seemed to reinforce the impossibility. Each day brought fresh despair as the Allies suffered losses that might have been prevented. Convoys were sunk, soldiers ambushed, supplies lost to the sea. But Turing and his colleagues were undeterred. He proposed a radical solution, not to solve the code by hand, but to build a machine that could think like a codebreaker, at speeds no human could match. This machine would later be called the bomb. The bomb was more than a collection of wires, gears and rotors. It was a mechanical mind, designed to test thousands of possible Enigma settings in minutes. It transformed hours of mental labor into seconds. Yet even with the bomb, the work was far from easy. Enigma was dynamic. The Germans changed keys daily. Operators were trained to follow routines that seemed trivial but could obscure patterns, creating near-infinite variations. Every breakthrough led to a new challenge. Then a small crack in the armor appeared. Bletchley Park had access to the raw brilliance of the Polish mathematicians. Rejewski's work had laid the foundation, and Turing, with his unique perspective, built upon it. By combining mathematics, logic, and machine power, the codebreakers began to find patterns, subtle repetitions, slight errors by German operators, predictable phrases. These tiny errors became the threads that unraveled the larger mystery. It was meticulous, exhausting, and dangerous work. If the Germans discovered that Enigma had been compromised, the consequences would be catastrophic. The Allies could lose a war they had barely begun. Yet against all odds, the team at Bletchley Park persisted. Day by day, they chipped away at the impossibility, transforming despair into hope. By 1941, a quiet revolution had taken place. The Allies could read portions of the German naval codes. U-boat attacks were anticipated, convoys rerouted, lives saved. The war slowly began to tilt in Britain's favor, though the world remained unaware of the invisible battle being waged behind closed doors. Still, victory was fragile. Each advancement led to new German countermeasures. Every success risked exposure. The codebreakers knew they were in a race against time, and the enemy, a machine that seemed unbreakable, would not relent. It was a war fought not with guns or tanks, but with minds. A war in which the smallest insight, the tiniest misstep, could change the course of history. And in this silent struggle, the question remained, could one team of brilliant individuals truly turn the tide against an enemy convinced of its invincibility? The Atlantic Ocean was a vast, merciless battlefield. Storms lashed against ships, and beneath the waves, a silent predator prowled. German U-boats, stealthy and lethal, threatened to strangle Britain's lifeline. Food, weapons, fuel, all depended on ships crossing thousands of miles of turbulent ocean. And every night, in the darkened rooms of Bletchley Park, the codebreakers raced against the invisible enemy. Enigma messages flowed in constantly. Each telegram was a challenge, a puzzle box of letters that could hide orders to sink a convoy, redirect troops, or cut off supplies. One mistake, one missed signal, could cost hundreds of lives. Early in the war, the Allies were losing. U-boat attacks were devastating. Ships vanished without a trace. Fear grew that Britain might be starved into surrender. The situation was dire. Yet, slowly, the breakthroughs began. Turing's bombers and the meticulous work of cryptanalysts began to reveal German naval strategies. They detected patterns in the seemingly random sequences, routes, timings, operational codes. It was painstaking work, and the margin for error was vanishingly small. Each intercepted message was scrutinized for the tiniest clue. A repeated phrase, a common weather report, a habitual procedural error by the German operators. These small details, invisible to the enemy, became keys to the greater puzzle. One night in 1941, a decrypted message revealed the location of a U-boat wolf pack lying in wait for a convoy heading to Liverpool. Ships had already set sail, unaware of the danger ahead. The codebreakers, acting swiftly, alerted the Admiralty. Ships were rerouted, lives were saved, cargo reached Britain. It was a minor victory on paper, but monumental in impact. Every life saved, every ton of supplies delivered, strengthened the resolve of the Allied forces. And yet, for those at Bletchley Park, the work never stopped. The Germans adapted constantly. They changed rotor wirings, introduced additional plugboard settings, and refined operating procedures. Every breakthrough brought new obstacles. For every message decrypted, there were hundreds more that remained inscrutable. Despite the pressure, the codebreakers persevered. Their secret, unacknowledged victories allowed the Royal Navy to operate with an almost invisible shield. The U-boat threat, though still formidable, began to falter. Convoys became less vulnerable. Allied strategy gained clarity. But the human toll was relentless. Exhaustion, stress, and secrecy weighed heavily. These brilliant minds worked in silence, knowing their contributions were invisible to the world. They risked burnout, failure, and even death if their operations were discovered. Yet they pressed on. In 1942, a crucial breakthrough arrived. The Germans, confident in their machine, underestimated the persistence and ingenuity of their adversaries. Minor operator mistakes, a repeated message here, a predictable weather report there, gave the Allies the leverage they needed. Using these cribs, the codebreakers could reconstruct daily keys with unprecedented speed. The tide began to turn. Convoys crossed the Atlantic with fewer losses. U-boat attacks became less effective. For the first time, the enemy's invincibility was challenged. The work at Bletchley Park was not glamorous. It lacked the drama of the battlefield. There were no medals, no public recognition, yet it was decisive. In the quiet, unseen struggle, a secret army of minds was shaping the course of history, one decrypted message at a time. By 1943, the cumulative effect of these victories was undeniable. German strategy faltered, resources were misallocated. The very machine meant to ensure their dominance, the Enigma, had become a liability. It was proof that even the most formidable technology could be defeated, not by brute force, but by ingenuity, perseverance, and the unyielding determination of a small, secretive team. And yet, the war was far from over. Every day brought new challenges. Every success was tempered by uncertainty. The story of Enigma was not just one of machines and mathematics. It was a story of human resilience, courage, and the unbreakable will to prevail against seemingly impossible odds. By 1944, the war had reached a critical juncture. The Allies were preparing for the greatest invasion Europe had ever seen, D-Day. The success of this operation depended not on sheer force alone, but on intelligence, knowledge of German troop movements, fortified positions, and supply lines. And once again, the quiet minds of Bletchley Park proved decisive. Every intercepted and decrypted message gave the Allies a strategic edge. German forces were misled. Reinforcements were delayed, positions were abandoned, entire operations were undermined, all without the enemy ever realizing how much had been revealed. The Codebreakers' work had saved countless lives. Ships no longer sank as they once had. Convoys reached their destinations. Armies advanced with knowledge that the enemy thought impossible to possess. Yet outside the manor walls, the world remained unaware. The men and women of Bletchley Park were bound by secrecy that would last decades. They were unsung heroes, their triumphs hidden behind layers of classified documents. Among them, Alan Turing faced a personal journey that mirrored the monumental task he had undertaken. Brilliant yet socially isolated, he would go on to lay the foundations of modern computing, a legacy far beyond the war itself. But in 1945, he remained focused on a singular mission, defeating the code that threatened millions. As the Allies advanced, Enigma's grip faltered. The machine that had once seemed invincible, the symbol of German technological superiority, was rendered impotent by the relentless ingenuity of human minds. The war, once balanced on the knife edge of uncertainty, now tilted decisively toward freedom. Victory was not immediate, nor was it total. Europe was devastated, and the world would take years to recover. But the secret victory over Enigma had shortened the war, saved lives, and altered the course of history. In the years after 1945, the story of Bletchley Park remained classified. The world would not know for decades that the fate of nations had been decided not by tanks, planes, or bombs, but by mathematics, logic, and tireless human intellect. When the story finally emerged, it revealed the extraordinary truth that a handful of individuals working in silence could challenge what was thought unbreakable. They had faced one of the most sophisticated machines ever created, and through determination, intellect, and innovation, they had prevailed. The legacy of the Codebreakers is not only in the lives they saved or the battles they won, but in the very essence of human ingenuity. They remind us that no system, no matter how complex, is beyond understanding. That even in the darkest hours, insight, collaboration, and perseverance can turn the tide. Today, the name Bletchley Park stands as a monument to this invisible army. Machines, once shrouded in secrecy, now occupy museum halls. Documents that were once classified are open for all to study. And the story of Alan Turing and his colleagues serves as an enduring testament that knowledge is power and courage can take many forms, often silent, often unseen, but always profound. The Enigma may have been unbreakable in the minds of its creators, but it was human ingenuity, relentless curiosity, and the unwavering will of a few extraordinary individuals that changed the fate of a world at war. In the end, it was not a weapon that won the war. It was minds unyielding to impossibility. It was the triumph of thought over machine, and in that triumph, history itself was rewritten. And so the story of Enigma and the Codebreakers of Bletchley Park reminds us of a simple truth. Sometimes the greatest victories are won not with weapons, but with minds. A handful of extraordinary individuals, working in silence, turned the tide of history, proving that ingenuity, courage, and perseverance can change the world. If you found this journey into one of history's greatest secrets as fascinating as we did, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story that reveals the hidden side of history. Comment below and tell us, which secret operation in history blew your mind the most? We might explore it in the next episode. Until next time, remember, history isn't just about what happened. It's about the untold stories that shaped everything we know today.